security! Get this black garbage out of my kitchen before his cafeteria grease ruins the truffle oil!
Richard Calloway spoke loud enough for everyone in the room to hear. 250 heads turned. He was pointing at Marcus, a black man standing at the door, wearing a faded Woodlawn Elementary cafeteria uniform and holding an old notebook. Richard Calloway didn't just speak. He spat those words, deliberately knocking a champagne flute off the table so it shattered right at Marcus Webb's worn work boots. The ballroom of the Palmer House Hotel went dead silent. 250 people stared as the elite white chef sneered, looking down his nose at Marcus's faded Woodlawn Elementary cafeteria uniform.
Look at yourself! You smell like industrial cleaner and social waste, boy! You really thought a low-life cafeteria cook could walk in here and claim my Michelin-starred masterpiece? Go back to frying fish sticks for fourth graders. You don't belong in the same room as my food.
But Marcus didn't flinch. He didn't run. Instead, he slowly stepped forward and slammed his old grease-stained notebook directly onto Calloway's pristine white tablecloth.
I wrote this recipe on March 14, 2016, in your kitchen, while you were stealing it.
If you've ever watched someone be underestimated, exploited, and stripped of their dignity just because of how they look, stay right here, because what this cafeteria worker did next completely destroyed the most powerful chef in Chicago. Drop your city in the comments and subscribe now. Justice is about to be served cold. Chicago doesn't ease you into winter, it announces it. One morning in early November, the wind comes off Lake Michigan like a verdict. Cold, final, no room for argument. The kind of cold that finds every gap in your coat, every worn seam, every place where the fabric has thinned from too many years of too little. Marcus Webb knew that cold well. He'd been walking into it every morning for 8 years. 5:28 a.m. Woodlawn Elementary School, a 2-story brick building on South Cottage Grove Avenue that looked like it had been built with good intentions and a limited budget sometime in the 1960s and hadn't had much added to it since. The parking lot lights buzzed yellow in the dark. A torn plastic bag moved across the asphalt like it had somewhere to be. Marcus unlocked the side door with a key that stuck unless you lifted the handle at exactly the right angle. He'd learned the angle in his first week. That was 8 years ago. The key still stuck. The school never fixed it. Inside, the cafeteria kitchen smelled like industrial cleaner and the ghost of yesterday's macaroni. Fluorescent lights flickered once before holding. The steam trays were cold. The prep tables were empty. The 6-burner range along the back wall was institutional grade, 30 years old. 2 burners running slightly hotter than the others. Marcus set down his bag, tied on his apron, and got to work. By 6 a.m., the stock was on. Real stock. Not the powder that came in the district's standard supply order. Marcus bought his own. A $10 bag of chicken backs from the halal market on 63rd Street, stretched across 3 batches, twice a week. Nobody asked him to. Nobody reimbursed him. He did it because the kids could taste the difference. He'd learned that from his grandmother, Ida Mae Webb, born in Natchez, Mississippi, 1931. Cooked for her family, her church, her neighbors, and half the block for 60 years on a 4-burner gas stove that she treated like a concert instrument. She didn't have recipes. She had memory. She had hands that knew when a roux was ready before any thermometer could tell you, and a nose that could detect the exact moment garlic went from golden to gone. Marcus sat at her elbow from the time he could reach the counter. By 10, he could make her cornbread without looking at anything. By 14, he was cooking Sunday dinner for 12 people, while Ida Mae sat at the kitchen table and offered corrections in the specific way she had. Not criticism, just precision. A little more time on the phone, baby. Let it talk to you first. He heard her voice every morning in this kitchen. Standing over a steam tray in a faded uniform, he still heard her. Let it talk to you first. He hadn't always been here. That was the thing nobody at Woodlawn knew. Not the principal, not the other cafeteria staff, not the district supervisor, who came twice a year with a clipboard. They saw the uniform and the name tag and the steam trays, and they saw what they expected to see. They didn't know about the 6 years before. Marcus had come up through the Chicago restaurant world the hard way. He'd washed dishes at 17, worked the fryer at 20, moved up to prep cook, then line cook, then sauté at a mid-level Italian place in River North. He was 29 when he first walked into the Meridian, Calloway Group's flagship. 16 tables. A bar that served exactly 4 cocktails, each with a 3-paragraph description on the menu, the kind of restaurant where the lighting was calibrated to make the food look like it was being photographed at all times, because it usually was. Marcus came in through the back, applied for a line cook position. The executive chef at the time, a compact, serious Frenchman named Remy Allard, watched him break down a chicken in 45 seconds, tasted his pan sauce, and offered him the job without asking for references. That was 2010. By 2013, he was sous chef. The hours were punishing, 60, sometimes 70 hours a week. But Marcus didn't stay for the pay. He stayed because the Meridian's kitchen was the first place in his professional life where the work matched the standard he held in his own head. And he stayed because that kitchen was where he'd started writing. Not orders, not schedules. He bought a black composition notebook from the drugstore on his block, and he started recording ideas, not recipes he'd read or techniques he'd been taught, his own. The flavor combinations that came to him at 2 a.m. on the bus ride home, the particular way his grandmother's grains of selim, a West African pepper she'd used her whole life, smoky and citrusy, and unlike anything Marcus had encountered in any professional kitchen, could be ground fine and worked into a bone marrow emulsion to produce something that tasted simultaneously ancient and entirely new. He filled 34 pages in 2 years. Page 11 was the one that mattered. The 14th of March, 2016, short rib concept, sorghum lacquer, 7-2-hour braise, bone marrow emulsion with GOS grind. Working title, Webb's Crown. He'd presented it to Richard Calloway on a Tuesday afternoon, standing at the pass, handwritten notes in hand. Calloway had leaned over the page for a long moment. Interesting, he'd said. Then he'd handed the notebook back and walked away. 14 days later, Calloway's Crown appeared on the Meridian's menu at $185 a plate. Marcus Webb's name was not on it. Amara Webb was 17 years old, and the most organized person Marcus had ever met. Her room had a wall of index cards, color-coded by subject, ranked by deadline. Her GPA was 3.94. She was taking 2 AP classes simultaneously. She'd read the course catalog for Kendall College of Culinary Arts so many times the spine had cracked down the middle. She wanted to be a pastry chef. Kendall's program cost $28,000 a year. Marcus had $890 in his checking account. Every night after dinner, Amara would sit across from him at the kitchen table with her college brochure, and she'd ask the same question. "We're going to figure it out, right, Dad?" And every night Marcus would look at his daughter and say the same thing. "We're going to figure it out." He didn't know how. It was a Thursday evening in November when Amara came home from school with a newspaper. The Chicago Tribune, food section. She set it on the kitchen table without a word. Marcus looked down. A full-color photograph, a plate, dark lacquered short rib, a smear of pale emulsion. Calloway's Crown celebrates 5 years as Chicago's most iconic dish. Marcus read the headline once. He read it again. His left hand was resting on the table beside the paper. Amara noticed. His fingers had begun to move, pressing, shaping. The way they did when he was thinking something he hadn't said out loud yet. She didn't ask what he was thinking. She went to her room, sat at her desk, and looked at the wall of index cards. And Marcus Webb sat at the kitchen table and looked at a photograph of a dish he had invented, carrying another man's name, and felt something shift inside him. Slowly, like a door that hadn't been opened in 8 years finally turning on its hinge. Not anger. Certainty. To understand what Richard Calloway took from Marcus Webb, you have to understand what Marcus Webb had built. Not the dish, not the recipe, what it took to get there. The grains of selim came first. Most people in the American culinary world had never heard of them. The spice goes by different names depending on where you are. Hwentia in Ghana, kimba in parts of West Africa, more pepper in old colonial trade records. The pods are long, dark, ridged like a fingerprint. When you crack them open, the smell is unlike anything in a standard spice rack. Smoky, resinous, a low citrus note underneath. Like someone had taken a wood fire and a Meyer lemon and pressed them into a single molecule. Ida Mae Webb had used them her whole life. She'd gotten them from her mother, who'd gotten them from hers, a chain of kitchen knowledge passed hand to hand through generations of black women in Mississippi who cooked from memory because nobody was writing their recipes down in books. Ida Mae called them the pepper that remembers. She just said that food made with them tasted like it knew where it came from. Marcus grew up thinking they were something every kitchen had. He was 22 before he realized they were something almost no kitchen had. He started ordering them himself, small amounts, from a West African grocery on the south side, run by a Ghanaian family who recognized what he was asking for immediately and seemed quietly pleased that someone outside the community wanted them. The grains of selim didn't want to be the loudest thing in a dish. They wanted to be the thing you couldn't identify but couldn't stop tasting. Ground fine, bloomed in fat, worked into an emulsion. They added a dimension that professional cooks spent entire careers chasing. The thing that made someone put down their fork and say, "There's something in this I can't name." Page 11 had been right from the beginning. Short rib, 7-2, hour braise, in a liquid built around espresso, dried chile, and a small amount of tamarind. The sorghum lacquer applied in the final hour. And the emulsion, bone marrow, rendered and cooled, worked with a fine grind of grains of selim until it became something that sat at the border between butter and smoke and memory. He'd spent 3 weeks developing it on his days off. Amara, 9 years old at the time, had sat on the counter watching. "The sauce needs something, Dad." "I know. It needs to be more like a hug." He'd laughed. Then he'd added a half-teaspoon of grains of selim to the emulsion and tasted it and understood exactly what she'd meant. He presented it to Richard Calloway on a Tuesday afternoon in March. Calloway leaned over the page for a long moment. He picked up the notebook, read page 11 slowly. His expression didn't change. No excitement. No acknowledgement. Just a man reading something and deciding what to do with it. He handed the notebook back. "Interesting," he said. "Leave the tasting plate." He walked away. 14 days later, he came into the Meridian and found a new menu insert on the service station. Calloway's Crown, slow-braised short rib, sorghum lacquer, bone marrow emulsion, $185. His name was not on it. Marcus went to Calloway's office that afternoon. Knocked. Was told to come back later. Came back later. Was told Calloway was on a call. Sent an email that night asking for a conversation about attribution. The next morning, he was called into the office by Craig Dunlap, Calloway's operations director. There were 2 people in the room. Craig, and a woman who introduced herself as the company's legal counsel. The meeting lasted 11 minutes. They told him that an internal audit had identified $3,200 in missing inventory. They told him the evidence was clear. They told him he could resign immediately or be terminated for cause. Marcus felt the floor tilt under him. "That's not true," he said. "Those ingredients were used in kitchen prep. I have my prep logs." "The prep logs are part of the documentation," the lawyer said. Her voice was pleasant. "Professional." "The notebook," Marcus said. "My recipe notebook. I developed that dish. I can show you the date." Craig Dunlap slid a single sheet of paper across the desk. A standard employment contract clause. Paragraph 7, subsection C. All creative and intellectual work product developed in connection with employment, including culinary concepts, recipes, and techniques, is the sole property of Calloway Group. "I want to speak with Mr. Calloway directly," he said. "Mr. Calloway is not available." Craig said. Marcus was escorted from the building through the back entrance. Into the alley. He stood holding his notebook and his apron and nothing else, and listened to the door close behind him with a sound like a period at the end of a sentence. He applied to 14 restaurants over the next 4 months. The fourth rejection came from a chef he'd worked alongside years earlier, who told him, quietly, that his name had been flagged in a background check through an industry HR network. Details of the alleged theft. The Calloway Group's name attached like a seal. "I know it's not true," the chef said. He stirred his coffee. "But I can't." He didn't finish the sentence. Marcus applied to 8 more restaurants. The responses stopped coming. His wife Diane tried. She came home one evening with a folder of potential next steps and talked through each option with the careful optimism of someone who loves a person too much to let them see her own fear. 3 months later, the cafeteria position at Woodlawn Elementary came up. $16.40 an hour. Benefits. Stable hours. Diane left 2.5 years later. Not dramatically. Not with anger. Just the slow, honest acknowledgement that the man she'd married had gone somewhere inside himself that she didn't know how to reach anymore. Marcus moved to the 2-bedroom on South Evans Avenue. He paid his bills. He fed his daughter. He went to work at 5:28 every morning and came home at 3:30 every afternoon and cooked dinner and helped with homework and went to bed and got up and did it again. He kept the notebook in the drawer of his nightstand. He didn't open it. Some losses you process. Some losses you simply carry. For 8 years, Marcus Webb had been carrying this one. Marcus didn't sleep that Thursday night. He got up at 3 a.m., made coffee, sat at the table, opened the drawer where he kept the notebook. He hadn't opened it in 2 years. The cover was soft from handling, the black gone to gray at the corners. He turned to page 11 slowly. The 14th of March, 2016. Short rib concept. Sorghum lacquer. 7-2-hour braise. Bone marrow emulsion. With GOS grind. Working title, Webb's Crown. Below the recipe notes, in smaller handwriting, tested in apartment kitchen, South Evans Avenue A, said it needed to be more like a hug. Added half teaspoon GOS to emulsion. She was right. Amara, 9 years old, sitting on the kitchen counter. He closed the notebook. Near the bottom of the newspaper article, he found the line he hadn't seen coming. The Calloway Group's annual gala will be held Thursday, November 14th at the Palmer House Hotel. Marcus looked at the date on his phone. Tuesday, November 12th, 3:47 a.m. Thursday was in 48 hours. He went to work at 5:28 as usual, made stock, served 2 shifts, cleaned the kitchen, spoke to nobody about what he was thinking. On the bus home, he thought about risk. He was a 51-year-old black man with a city employment record and $890 in his checking account. He had a daughter 17 days from submitting her first college application. He had a job with benefits and no realistic path to anything better. Then he thought about Amara saying, "We're going to figure it out, right, Dad?" Then he thought about Ida Mae Webb saying the pepper that remembers and meaning something larger than a spice. He got off the bus 2 stops early and walked the rest of the way home. Thursday morning, before he left, he picked up the notebook from the nightstand and put it in the inside pocket of his jacket. He was almost at the door when his phone buzzed. A text from Amara. "Dad, where are you going?" He looked at the message for a moment. "Somewhere I should have gone 8 years ago. Don't wait up." He put the phone in his pocket and opened the door. The November cold hit him immediately. He walked to the bus stop. He waited. The bus came. At the Palmer House, Marcus walked toward the check-in table. "Good evening. Name?" "Marcus Webb." She scanned the list. Scanned it again. "I'm sorry. I don't see a Marcus Webb on the guest list." "I'm not on the guest list, sir. This is a private event." "Tell him Marcus Webb is here," Marcus said. "Tell him I'm here about the dish." She looked at him, the uniform, the name tag, the worn work boots. She picked up a radio. Craig Dunlap appeared through the double doors. 9 years older, heavier in the face. But the eyes were the same. Marcus. Craig. You can't be here. I am here, Marcus said. Which means I can. Tell him I'm here, Marcus said, or I'll wait outside until the event is over and introduce myself to every journalist who comes through those doors. I understand Diana Reyes from the Tribune is covering tonight. Craig looked at him for a long moment. Then he turned and went back through the double doors. 3 minutes later, the doors opened again. Mr. Calloway will see you briefly. Inside. Marcus followed them through the double doors into the Empire Ballroom. The room was everything the lobby had promised. 30-foot ceilings, chandeliers, tables set with white linen. The string quartet was playing something from Brahms. Marcus walked in wearing a faded cafeteria uniform and work boots. The room slowed, table by table, conversation by conversation. Heads turned. Eyes moved from his face to the name tag to the uniform. Richard Calloway was standing near the head table. Silver-haired, custom suit, a glass of something amber in his right hand. He saw Marcus from across the room. His face went careful, controlled. Marcus walked toward him. The crowd parted. He stopped 6 feet from Calloway. 8 years, the back alley, the closing door. Interesting. Page 11. And then, before Marcus could speak, Richard Calloway laughed. Security! Get this black garbage out of my kitchen before his cafeteria grease ruins the truffle oil. The words landed like a struck match. 250 heads turned. Calloway reached out and knocked a champagne flute deliberately from the nearest table. It fell and shattered at Marcus's feet, the sound cutting clean through the Brahms and the hum of the room. Look at yourself, he said. You smell like industrial cleaner and social waste boy. You really thought a low-life cafeteria cook could walk in here and claim my Michelin-starred masterpiece? He gestured broadly at the room. Go back to frying fish sticks for 4th graders. You don't belong in the same room as my food. The room was absolutely still. The string quartet had stopped playing. Diana Reyes, standing near the press table, had her phone raised. The red dot was on. She stepped forward, finding a better angle. Marcus stood in the center of it. Crystal at his feet. 250 people watching. Calloway's voice still hanging in the air like smoke. He didn't move. He reached into the inside pocket of his jacket and took out the notebook. He walked 3 steps forward and set the notebook on the white linen of the head table. I wrote this recipe on the 14th of March 2016, Marcus said. His voice was low, steady. The voice of a man who had spent 8 years getting up at 5:28 a.m. and knew exactly what he was made of. In your kitchen, while you were stealing it, the room exhaled. The sound a room makes when something has been said that cannot be unsaid. The crack in Calloway's face closed in less than a second. He picked up the notebook the way you'd pick up a piece of mail you hadn't ordered. He opened it to a random page. Not page 11. He looked at it for 4 seconds. Then he closed it. He smiled. Not the cruel performance from a minute ago. The one that felt almost warm. The one that was actually a tool. A notebook, Calloway said quietly. You came here, on a Thursday evening, to my event. In that, he glanced at the uniform. To show me a notebook. He turned to face the room. Ladies and gentlemen, Calloway said, I apologize for the interruption. This gentleman believes he has a claim on a dish that has been on our menu for 8 years, featured in Food and Wine, cited by James Beard, served to the governor of this state. He turned back to Marcus. A notebook. Page 11, Marcus said. The 14th of March 2016. Every measurement, every technique. My notation for the spice you've never been able to replicate correctly. Something happened in Calloway's eyes. Fast, controlled. He knew about the spice. GOS, Marcus said. Grains of selim. West African pepper. You've had 5 years of reviewers call Calloway's crown almost perfect. You know why it's almost? Because you never knew what made it what it is. You took the recipe, but you didn't know what GOS meant. Your kitchen has been making a copy of a copy for 5 years. Chef Lena Okafor was sitting at the judges' table near the stage. 62 years old, born in Lagos, trained in Paris, the author of 2 books on West African culinary tradition. She had eaten Calloway's crown 3 times and had written that the dish was exceptional but somehow unresolved, as though the creator could hear a note he couldn't quite reach. She was very still now. Her eyes were on Marcus. Calloway set down his bourbon. He straightened his jacket. "All right," Calloway said. He said it quietly, almost gently. "You want to make a claim on my dish. In my room, in front of my guests. Then prove it." He took out his phone. "My kitchen, tonight. My chef's against you. You cook your version. We cook ours. We bring in judges. Lena Okafor is sitting right there." He looked back at Marcus. "You win, I transfer $400,000 to any account you name. Tonight. In front of these people and whatever stream Miss Reyes is running. 8 years. Compensated. Done." He paused. "You lose. You sign a document tonight acknowledging no claim, no grievance, no basis for any future action against the Calloway Group. And you don't come back. Not to this room, not to this industry, not to any kitchen in this city where my name means something. 45 minutes. Whatever you need from my kitchen, you get. 1 dish, head to head." He extended his hand. "Do we have a deal?" Marcus looked at the hand. He thought about the bus ride here, the November cold, the 11 minutes in Craig Dunlap's office, the back alley, the closing door. He thought about interesting. He thought about Amara at the kitchen table. "We're going to figure it out, right, Dad?" He thought about $400,000. He thought about grains of selim. He thought about his grandmother's voice. "Let it talk to you first." He looked at the hand for 3 more seconds. Then he shook it. Diana Reyes said quietly into her phone, to the 4,200 people now watching, "You are all witnesses." Craig Dunlap moved the event timeline back 45 minutes and cleared the prep kitchen. Calloway's chef was Patrick Dunn, 38 years old, executive chef of the Meridian for the past 4 years. He'd made Calloway's crown hundreds of times. He was good. Marcus knew it without having to see him work. Marcus looked at his station. The Palmer House prep kitchen was professional grade. 8-burner range, full walk-in. Every piece of equipment, clean and organized and available. Marcus looked at what he had. He asked the catering manager for his ingredients. Short rib, espresso, dried chile, sorghum molasses, bone marrow, all confirmed available within 3 minutes. Marcus took stock of his station. Then he went still. The grains of selim were not here. Of course they weren't. They were never in any kitchen in Chicago except his own. He bought them from a West African grocery on 63rd Street and kept them in a small glass jar at home. He'd thought about bringing them on the bus, briefly, and dismissed the thought. He looked at the spice rack. Black pepper, white pepper, Szechuan pepper, smoked paprika, 30 more options, all of them good, none of them right. Without the grains of selim, the dish would be good. Patrick Dunn's dish would be good. Good against good, in front of judges, in Calloway's kitchen, on Calloway's terms. Marcus knew how that calculation ended. He looked at the clock on the wall. 43 minutes. He didn't hear her come in. He heard the door first. The click of it opening. He turned. Amara was standing just inside the door. She was wearing her school jacket, the navy one with the Maplewood High crest on the chest, and she was carrying a canvas tote bag. Her face was doing the thing it did when she'd figured something out and was waiting to see if you'd figured it out too. She hadn't stayed home. She'd taken the bus to the Palmer House, gotten as far as the lobby before a staff member stopped her. Waited. Watched through the gap in the ballroom doors. Seen enough to understand what was happening. She walked to Marcus's station. She set the bag down on the prep table. Inside, among a library book and a folded hoodie and a water bottle, was a small glass jar. Dark brown seeds, long, ridged, the color of old wood, grains of selim. She'd taken them from the spice cabinet at home. She didn't know why she'd taken them when she left the apartment. She'd been moving quickly, following instinct, grabbing things without fully knowing what she was grabbing. She set the jar on the prep table between them. Then she stepped back against the wall and waited. Marcus picked up the jar. He held it for a moment, felt the weight of it, small, glass, warm from the tote bag. He thought about Ida Mae Webb at the stove in Natchez. He thought about Amara at 9 years old on the kitchen counter saying it needs to be more like a hug. He thought about a composition notebook and a date in March, and a man who had said interesting and walked away. He set the jar down at his station. He looked at the clock. 41 minutes. He rolled up his sleeves, and he began. The first thing he did was the braise liquid, not the short rib. The braise liquid first, because the flavor base needed time. Espresso, dried ancho, a small amount of dark sorghum, a strip of orange peel, water and stock in a ratio he'd arrived at through 3 weeks of testing in his apartment kitchen 8 years ago and hadn't forgotten. He moved without performance. No flair, no flourish, just economy. Every motion deliberate, no motion wasted. He bloomed the grains of sellum first. The smell that came off the pan was immediate and unmistakable. Smoky. Resinous. That low citrus note underneath. The one that came from somewhere older and more specific. He heard something, a small sound from across the kitchen. Lena Okafor was standing in the doorway of the prep kitchen. She hadn't been invited back here. She'd come on her own. She was standing with her arms at her sides and her head slightly tilted and her eyes closed. She was smelling. Wentia, she thought. The name her mother had used. The pepper from home. She opened her eyes. She looked at Marcus. At the faded Woodlawn Elementary uniform with the name tag, Marcus W. She didn't speak. She stayed in the doorway and she watched. 38 minutes in, Marcus plated. Not because he had 7 minutes left, because it was ready. He knew when food was ready the way his grandmother had known. Not from a timer, not from a thermometer, but from everything at once. He plated in silence. Short rib. Centered. The sorghum lacquer applied with a brush. The emulsion placed with a spoon. A deliberate smear to the left of the meat, pale against the dark of the plate. He looked at it. It wasn't a restaurant plate. It was a cook's plate. The plate of a man who'd learned from a woman who never plated anything in her life, because plating was for people who needed the food to look like it cost something. It looked like it cost something. Not because of the presentation, because of what was in it. He was ready. They carried both plates to the ballroom. Both plates set on the judge's table. Lena Okafor returned to her seat. She looked at both plates. She picked up her fork. The room was very quiet. Lena tasted the first plate, Patrick Dunn's. The institutional knowledge, the 5 years of service, the almost perfect dish. She set her fork down. She picked it up again. She tasted the second plate. Marcus's, the spice that remembered, the emulsion with the window that took 3 weeks to find, the braise that was 22 minutes instead of 72 hours and somehow tasted like patience. She put the fork down. She was quiet for a long time. Then she spoke. "This dish," Lena Okafor said, "is what I have been trying to taste for 5 years." She said it quietly. In a room that quietly, was enough. Every time I ate Calloway's Crown, I wrote the same note in my review. Exceptional but unresolved. As though the creator could hear a note he couldn't quite reach. She looked at Marcus's plate. "Now I understand what the note was." She set her fork down. "Mr. Calloway." Calloway didn't move. His bourbon was still in his hand. The ice had long since melted to water. "Your chef's version is excellent," Lena said. "It is technically proficient, beautifully executed, and deeply familiar to anyone who has eaten this dish in your restaurant." She paused. "It is also a copy." The word landed without drama. Lena Okafor didn't deal in drama. She dealt in precision. A copy made by someone who never knew what made the original what it is. She turned to Marcus. "Where did you learn to use Wentia?" Marcus said, "My grandmother. She grew up in Mississippi. She called it the pepper that remembers." Lena was quiet for a moment. "My mother used that phrase," she said, "in Lagos, a different language, the same meaning." She looked at the room. This spice traveled from West Africa to the American South in the hands of enslaved people who brought their food knowledge with them, because food knowledge cannot be taken from you the way other things can be taken. It moved through generations of black kitchens, passed hand to hand, grandmother to grandchild, because it was never written down in any cookbook that anyone in this room has ever read. She picked up the fork one more time, tasted the emulsion, set it down. No one in the professional culinary world in Chicago uses Wentia. No restaurant kitchen in this city stocks it. I know because I've looked. She looked at Marcus. Until tonight, she looked at Calloway. Mr. Calloway, your chef made the dish that has been on your menu for 5 years. It is correct in every technical respect, and it is missing the one thing that makes it extraordinary. The thing that your menu and your press releases and your food and wine interview have described as your personal creative vision. Because you never knew what it was. She folded her hands on the table. The original is on the plate in front of me. The man who created it is standing to my left wearing a school cafeteria uniform. She looked at Marcus directly. Welcome back, Chef Webb. The room took a breath. A woman near the front pressed her fingers to her mouth. A man in a charcoal suit sat slowly forward. 2 people near the back began typing on their phones. Diana Reyes checked her stream. 18,700 viewers. Amara Webb had been standing against the wall of the ballroom. She was still holding the canvas tote bag with the library books and the folded hoodie and the empty glass jar. She watched her father shake Lena Okafor's hand. She thought about every night at the kitchen table. We're going to figure it out, right, Dad? We're going to figure it out. She looked at her father. He was standing in the center of the Empire Ballroom, in a faded Woodlawn Elementary cafeteria uniform, and he was looking at her. Their eyes met across the room, and then Marcus Webb smiled. Not the small, cautious smile of a man managing his reactions in public. Not the careful expression of someone who has learned, over 8 years, to want less than he's capable of wanting. A real smile. Open. Sudden. The kind that starts before you decide to let it. The kind Amara had been waiting 17 years to see. She pressed her fingers to her mouth. She nodded at him. He nodded back. Now every eye in the room found Richard Calloway. He was standing by the bar. Same spot, same suit. But everything else about him had changed. His phone was in his hand. Screen dark. His bourbon sat on the bar untouched. The ice long melted. Craig Dunlap leaned in close. Richard, the stream. 40,000 people just watched you make that bet. On camera. Calloway's face went white. He had 2 choices. Pay the money in front of the room and the internet. Or refuse and let 40,000 witnesses turn him into the villain of every comment section for the next 6 months. He walked toward the stage. The crowd parted, not out of curiosity this time, out of judgment. He reached the foot of the stage. Marcus was still sitting at the judge's table, calm as still water, and for the first time all night Calloway had to look at someone as his equal. Calloway opened his mouth, closed it, tried again. That was. He paused, swallowed. Not what I expected. Marcus looked at him. No anger, no gloating, just the quiet, steady gaze of a man who had nothing left to prove. You expected nothing. His voice was low, almost gentle. That's exactly why you lost. The room heard every word. A murmur rolled through the crowd. The sound people make when the truth lands clean. Calloway reached into his pocket, pulled out his phone. His hand was shaking. Not a lot, but enough. He opened the app, typed the number. Sushuanmeyuan. He turned the screen toward Marcus, then pressed send. Marcus didn't look at the screen. He just nodded. Once, the room exhaled. Diana Reyes said 5 words into her phone. Chicago. The world. You just witnessed something. 44,000 viewers agreed. The clip went live before Marcus left the building. Someone in the crowd, a food blogger with 340,000 followers, had captured the first 60 seconds. Calloway's words. The champagne flute shattering. Marcus setting the notebook on the table. 62 seconds. No caption, just the video. She posted it at 9:14 p.m. By 9:31, it had been viewed 40,000 times. By 9:47, shared by 3 accounts with audiences over 1 million. By 10 p.m., 180,000 views and a comment section moving too fast to read. Marcus didn't know any of this. He was walking beside his daughter on East Monroe Street, the empty glass jar in his hand. They walked half a block before she spoke. "Did you know it was going to go like that?" Marcus thought about it honestly. "I knew what I had," he said. "I didn't know what it would do." She considered this, nodded. "The jar," she said. "I grabbed it without thinking. I didn't know why." "I know. Did you need it?" He looked at her. "I needed it," he said. Jerome Hall was at home in Evanston when the clip found him. He was in his kitchen making tea and watching a basketball game on his phone when a chef friend texted him a link with no context. 62 seconds. He watched it once. He watched it again. He set down his tea. Jerome Hall had been executive chef of the Meridian from 2017 to 2023. He'd come into the role after Marcus's departure, inheriting a kitchen that ran Calloway's Crown as its signature dish. He hadn't known Marcus Webb when he took the job. He'd heard the name, but the version he'd heard was the version Calloway had shaped. A disgruntled former employee, an allegation, an unfortunate situation, now resolved. He'd believed it because he'd had no reason not to. He'd made Calloway's Crown for 6 years, refined the technique, trained junior chefs, watched it win recognition and be described as evidence of Richard Calloway's creative vision, and always, with the specific awareness that something in it wasn't quite right. A gap in the flavor. Not a flaw exactly, but an incompleteness. He'd spent months trying to identify it, adjusted the braise liquid, changed the molasses ratio. The gap remained. He'd mentioned it to Calloway once. "The dish is perfect, Jerome. That's why it wins awards." Jerome had stopped mentioning it. Now he sat in his kitchen and watched a man in a cafeteria uniform set a notebook on a white tablecloth. He watched the clip 3 more times. Then he walked to the doorway. "Jerome?" Claudette, from the other room. She'd heard the silence change. "I have to do something," he said. She looked at him for a moment. "Okay," she said. He went back to the kitchen. He sat down at the table. He opened his email. What Jerome Hall had that Richard Calloway did not know he had. A folder. He'd created it in 2019 in the specific private way that people in positions of proximity to power create documentation. Not because they plan to use it, but because something in them understands that the day might come. The folder contained 7 items. A photograph from a 2016 kitchen meeting. Marcus Webb visible in the background, hand on a notebook, standing across a prep table from Richard Calloway. 3 internal emails from March 2016. The first, a message from Calloway's assistant to the menu design team, dated March 28th. Subject line: New edition. Calloway's Crown. The body contained the dish description, the price point, and a note. Chef's personal concept, treat as proprietary. The second, a response from the menu designer asking for the full recipe. The third, the recipe, forwarded from Calloway's email address, with a note in the notes field. GOSC Webb's original notes for quantity. See Webb's original notes. Jerome had found this email while doing a kitchen archive review in 2019. He'd sat with it for a long time. He'd closed the email. He'd created the folder. He'd told himself he was keeping it for context. He'd kept it for 4 years without opening it again. Now he opened it. He thought about the gap in the flavor, the incompleteness he'd spent months trying to identify. The thing Calloway had told him was perfection. He composed an email to Diana Reyes at the Chicago Tribune. He CC'd the Tribune's food editor and the James Beard Foundation's media contact. He attached all 7 items in the folder. In the body, he wrote 4 sentences. My name is Jerome Hall. I was executive chef of the Meridian from 2017 to 2023. The attached documents were gathered during my tenure and pertain to the origins of a dish called Calloway's Crown. I am sending these because what I saw tonight on Diana Reyes' live stream was something I have known, privately, for 4 years, and the time for keeping it private has passed. He read it once. He pressed send. Diana Reyes received the email at 10:23 p.m. She read it standing near the press table. Stream still running at 31,000 viewers. She read it twice. She looked at the third email. The recipe. The notes field. GOSC, Webb's original notes for quantity. She stood very still for a moment. I need to share something with you, she said to the camera. She opened Jerome's email. She read it aloud, all 4 sentences. Then she opened the third attachment and read the notes field. GOS, see Webb's original notes for quantity. Ladies and gentlemen of the Internet. Richard Calloway's own internal email from March 2016 references Marcus Webb's original notes as the source for the recipe now sold as Calloway's creation. She paused. This is not an allegation. This is a document sent by a man who worked in that kitchen for 6 years, with his name on it. Tonight, a tech journalist in the back of the room set up a portable projector against a white wall between 2 windows. The image appeared, 8 feet wide. Diana's voice. The email. The recipe. The notes field. GOSC Webb's original notes for quantity. In block letters. 8 feet wide. On the wall of the room that Richard Calloway had rented with his own money. The room went quiet again, not the earlier quiet of shock or social electricity, the quiet of reckoning. 250 people looked at the wall. Then 250 people turned and looked at Richard Calloway. He was standing near the bar. He heard the projector. He heard Diana's voice. He heard GOSC Webb's original notes for quantity. He turned around. He looked at the wall. He looked at his own company's email address in the sender field. He looked at the date. March 2016. He looked at the notes field. He looked at the wall for a long time. No bourbon. No performance of neutrality. No professional management of expression. Those tools require a foundation. A structure of control maintained by the belief that the room can still be managed. That structure had been under pressure all evening. Looking at his own email on an 8-foot wall, Richard Calloway felt it go. Not collapse. Men like Calloway don't collapse in rooms like this, they recalibrate. But recalibration is visible too, if you know what to look for. It looks like a man looking at a wall. Craig Dunlap materialized at his elbow. Richard. Calloway didn't look at him. Call the lawyers. It's kummenen. Call me kummenta. Call them now. Craig took out his phone. He walked toward the back hallway, away from the room, away from the projector and the stream and the 250 people who had turned from the wall to the man who'd sent the email. Calloway stood at the bar. He picked up his glass. He set it down without drinking. He looked at the room. His room. His event. His chandeliers and his white linen and his 250 guests in evening wear. And he understood, for the first time in 30 years, what it felt like to be in a room you have paid for and do not own. Diana Reyes walked to the center of the room. She let the stream run for 30 seconds without speaking. Sometimes the image is the statement. Then she said quietly, to 44,000 people. Jerome Hall signed Gwafansquit. With his contact information, he knew what he was sending, and he sent it anyway. She paused. That's what accountability looks like when it isn't forced. She looked at the bar. We're still waiting to see what the other kind looks like. Marcus Webb did not see any of this. He was on the number 6 bus heading south, sitting in the 3rd row, his notebook in his jacket pocket and the empty glass jar in his hand, and his daughter beside him. Amara's phone buzzed. She looked at it for a long time. Then she turned the screen toward Marcus. He looked. Diana's stream. The projector. His name on the wall. GOS. See Webb's original notes for quantity. He read it. He read it again. He sat with it. He thought about Jerome Hall, a man he'd never spoken to. A man who had worked in a kitchen for 6 years, making a dish that contained an abbreviation with Marcus's name attached to it in an email from Calloway's own account, in a notes field that Calloway had perhaps never imagined would be found. He thought about 4 words. See Webb's original notes. He looked at the empty jar. He thought about his grandmother, about the chain of hands, about a pepper that remembers. It remembers, he thought. Even when you think it's forgotten. Even when you close the folder. Even when you walk someone out the back door of a building and close it behind them. Even then, it remembers. Amara was watching him. Dad. He looked at her. Are you okay? He thought about the answer. The real one. Not the managed one. He looked at his daughter. Yeah, he said. He meant it. For the first time in 8 years, he meant it. Amara leaned her head against his shoulder. He put his arm around her. The bus moved south through Chicago. Outside, the November cold pressed against the windows. Inside, a father and a daughter went home. The Tribune ran it Friday morning, the food section. Above the fold, a photograph of Marcus Webb standing at the judge's table. Faded cafeteria uniform. Name tag, Marcus W. The notebook open in front of him, his hands resting on either side of it. Large hands, cook's hands, the kind that carry their history in the knuckles and the calluses. Behind him, slightly out of focus, Richard Calloway. Bourbon. Silver hair. The expression of a man who has just understood something he would have preferred not to understand. The headline, Calloway's crown, the recipe, and the man it was stolen from. It also included, in the final paragraph, a single line. Marcus Webb was not available for comment. According to a source present at the gala, he left the Palmer house with his daughter shortly after 10 p.m. Through the back entrance, the same door he was walked out of 8 years ago. This time, on his own terms. By 7 a.m. Friday, the article had 340,000 reads. By noon, 3.1 million combined views across platforms. The Calloway Group's statement at 9:47 a.m. said the company took these allegations seriously and was conducting an internal review. The internet received it with the specific energetic displeasure of people who have been confirmed in what they already knew they were going to feel. By 10:15 a.m., Calloway's crown and Marcus Webb were both trending. At 10:30 a.m. Friday, Marcus Webb was at Woodlawn Elementary. He'd come in at 5:28, the way he always came in. He made stock. He served 2 shifts. He cleaned the kitchen. The principal, Dr. Anita Sharma, came to the cafeteria door at 8:15 a.m., carrying her phone with the Tribune article on the screen. I didn't know, she said. Marcus looked at her. I know you didn't, he said. Is there anything you need? She said. Not right now, he said. But the second burner on the left still runs hot. Maintenance said they'd look at it in September. Dr. Sharma almost smiled. I'll follow up today, she said. She left. Marcus turned back to the stock. The Calloway Group did not collapse. That would be a satisfying ending, but it would be a lie. And this story has tried not to lie about the things that are true, even when they're unsatisfying. What happened was this. 2 artists on the Calloway label reached settlements in the weeks following the gala. One received a contract release. One received amended terms, better royalty rates, restored publishing rights on 3 albums. Jerome Hall's NDA was reviewed by a judge in February and found to be unenforceable under circumstances of documented misappropriation. The Meridian removed Calloway's crown from its menu in January. The official statement cited a seasonal menu refresh. Nobody believed the statement. Nobody was required to. The Calloway Group retained its office. Its gold records stayed on the walls. Richard Calloway still answered his phone in that low, slow voice. But the room was different. Not silent when he spoke. Just different. The specific difference that exists in a room after a wall has cracked. When everyone in it knows something that cannot be unknowed. Sometimes that's enough. Sometimes the crack is the thing. The James Beard Foundation meeting on Monday lasted an hour and 40 minutes. The program director was direct, which Marcus appreciated. The foundation was correcting the historical record. The second part of the conversation was a proposal. The foundation had a community education initiative, culinary programs in under-resourced schools across 6 cities. The program had been running for 3 years with mixed results. primarily because the people running the curriculum understood institutional cooking, but not the kind of kitchen knowledge that doesn't come from institutions, the kind that lives in the blood. The kind passed hand to hand from grandmother to grandchild in kitchens, where nobody wrote things down because writing them down was never the point. "We've been looking for the right person to consult on curriculum development," Carol said. "Someone who understands both sides, the professional kitchen and the kitchen that predates it." She looked at him. "I think that's you." Marcus looked at the table between them. He thought about Ida Mae Webb, about Greater Grace Baptist Church, and the Sunday song, and the 4 chords that don't live on sheet music because they live in the blood. He thought about 400 children a day, Monday through Friday, in 2 shifts. "What does consulting look like?" he said. "In terms of schedule, flexible. Your primary employment wouldn't need to change unless you chose to change it. Compensation?" She named a number. "I'd need to think about it," he said. "Of course. I'll call you Wednesday." "One more thing," she said, as the elevator doors opened. The amended citation. "Is there anything you'd want us to include?" "About the dish. About the origin." Marcus looked at the elevator. He thought about his grandmother, about Lagos and Mississippi and the chain of hands and a pepper that remembers. "Say it came from a kitchen in Natchez," he said. "And from someone who learned in that kitchen." "That's enough." She looked at him. "That's exactly right," she said. The elevator doors closed. Amara Webb submitted her application to Kendall College of Culinary Arts on November 28th. Her personal statement began, "My father carries a small glass jar of West African pepper in whatever bag he's using. He's done this for as long as I can remember. I never asked why until the night I grabbed it without thinking, and didn't know until later that it was the most important thing I'd ever picked up." She was accepted in February. Full program. 4 years. Marcus sat at the kitchen table when the email came through and read it 3 times, and then turned the laptop screen toward Amara, who was standing in the kitchen doorway with a dish towel in her hand. She read it. She looked at him. She dropped the dish towel and sat down, and put both hands flat on the table and breathed for a long time. "Okay," she finally said. "Okay," he said. Then Amara said, "Mom would have screamed." Marcus laughed, a real laugh, the deep, sudden kind that shakes your whole chest, the kind that comes when joy arrives faster than the body expects it. "She would have called everyone she knew," he said, "in order, starting with Grandma." Starting with Grandma. Then Amara got up and heated the soup, and Marcus set the table, and they had dinner, the way they always had dinner. The 2 of them at the table on South Evans Avenue, with the washing machines going below, and the November dark outside the window, and the notebook on the counter, and the empty glass jar on the shelf, clean, waiting to be refilled. Marcus Webb still works at Woodlawn Elementary. He goes in at 5:28 a.m. The key still sticks. The lights still flicker. The second burner on the left still runs hot. He feeds 400 children a day. He knows their names. He adjusts what he makes based on what they eat. He still buys his own chicken backs from the halal market on 63rd Street. Twice a week, on Tuesday and Thursday afternoons, after his shift, he takes the bus to the Jefferson Street Community Center, where the James Beard Foundation's culinary education program now has a curriculum development consultant. He teaches 3 groups of children, ages 8 through 14. He starts each session the same way. He puts a small jar on the prep table. He asks, "Has anyone ever tasted something and felt like it was trying to tell you something?" The children look at each other. Some of them laugh. Some of them look at the jar. Some of them have an expression Marcus recognizes, the expression of a person encountering a question that is going to matter to them for a long time. He opens the jar. He passes it around. He lets them smell it. And then he tells them about his grandmother, about a kitchen in Natchez, about the chain of hands and what it carries, and why it matters that they are here in this room today, in these bodies, with these hands, descended from people who brought their knowledge across water and held on to it through everything that tried to take it. He tells them the food will be better if they understand where it comes from. He tells them to let it talk to them first. So what did you just hear? A story about a stolen recipe. That's the simple version. But here's what it was really about. It was about the specific violence of being told that what you made doesn't belong to you, not just legally, though that too, but in the deeper sense, the sense that says, your knowledge, your grandmother's knowledge, the knowledge that traveled in the hands of people who were never given credit for anything, is ours now. We'll put our name on it. We'll sell it for $185 a plate. We'll call it wholly original. There are Marcus Webbs everywhere. In school, cafeterias, and community kitchens, and church basements, and food trucks, and the back lines of restaurants where the person with the ideas is not the person with the name on the door. People whose knowledge was gathered and shaped and carried across generations of kitchens that nobody documented, and who are then asked to bring that knowledge into spaces that will take it and give nothing back, and call that a transaction. The question was never whether Marcus Webb was talented enough. The question was whether the room was honest enough to acknowledge where the talent came from. And here is what Thursday night proved. Sometimes it takes a notebook. Sometimes it takes a jar of pepper and a daughter who grabs it without knowing why. Sometimes it takes a man in a different kitchen who kept a folder for 4 years because something in him knew that the day would come when keeping it private was no longer the right thing to do. Sometimes it takes all of it at once. But the thing that was taken doesn't disappear. It stays in the hands it came from. It stays in the child who grew up watching those hands. It stays in the jar on the shelf. It remembers. And one Thursday evening in November, in a hotel ballroom in Chicago, with 250 people watching, and 44,000 people streaming, and a plate of food that tasted like a kitchen in Natchez, Mississippi, and a grandmother named Ida May, and a child on a counter who said it needs to be more like a hug, it came back. If this story moved you, if it made you angry, or hopeful, or both, I want to ask you one thing. Think of someone you know, whose knowledge, whose craft, whose work has gone uncredited. Someone whose name belongs on something that's carrying someone else's. Drop their name in the comments, or just say, I know a Marcus Webb, because the world is full of them. And the first step to changing that is saying so. Subscribe if you want more stories like this. Every week, we find another name that belongs on something. Next time, a woman cleans offices in a law firm for 11 years. You'll want to know what she noticed. The pepper remembers. So do we.